doubt, uncertainty, maybe even confusion. Okay, if that's the mental state that you're in, if you are doubting, we need to understand, what are you doubting? Are you doubting the training split? Are you doubting like the entire program as to what you're doing? Are you doubting the phase that you're in? Be very specific. Is it the movement? Is it your form? Is it whether you should feel more of a sensation? Is it whether or not you should be doing more reps? And like, I strongly encourage, like, some people are like, you need a journal. I'm like, you need to write your thoughts the fuck down. Like, write them down so that you can see them and you can like ask yourself, like, do I really feel this way? Like, is this exactly what I am bothered by? The more you peel back those layers, keep going until you're there and you know exactly what it is that's upsetting you or creating this like sense of uncertainty. In the instance that you were doubting the movement, that you were doubting the form, whether you should feel a sensation, I'm going to say, unless you are an expert, unless you are working with an expert, unless you have someone like a trained individual who is like assisting you during the lift, it's probably not wise to make that modification. It's probably not wise to just be like, oh, I don't feel this, so I'm going to make an adjustment. And it's not to say that you can't make adjustments when you're training. It's not to say that isn't appropriate. But more often than not, I see people make these like intra-workout adjustments to what they're doing in a way that's conducive with them just simply feeling better. Like, just like in almost like an indulgent way. It's like, okay, the same thing, like, okay, you don't want to eat what's on your meal plan, you feel bored, you feel like stressed because of the diet, so you go into the kitchen, you put something in your mouth, you're just like, feels better, cool. That is the equivalent of what I see. Individuals will, instead of like sticking to the program, they will start doing things like the metaphorical stick the junk food into your mouth and be like, see, it worked. I feel better because I did this. And now you've built that habit of any time that you feel that bad feeling, anytime you have doubt around a thing, you just change it and then you're good and you're good to go. I think for most people, they're not really equipped to have the capacity, have the knowledge base that is going to allow them to make an appropriate adjustment, that's going to allow them to make an adjustment that is conducive with a better lift, that doesn't completely derail what their programming is. And maybe you go and you're just like, just this once, I need like a fuck it. Like, I need just to go off straight sensation. I'm going to do a lot of tempo. I'm going to do a lot of isolation work. I'm going to skip the compound. Maybe that makes sense. And it could make sense if the context is correct. But I wouldn't do this regularly. I wouldn't have it be a thing that every time you feel doubtful, every time you feel uncertain, and frankly, if that's something that you're feeling often, you need to outsource your training to someone who is equipped to handle it, to manage it, to coach you in it. Just telling you like, hey, here's your training split, go do this, train to failure. That's not really training coaching. And that's something that like over the years, I've had people tell me, they're like, yeah, everything you're doing is working. Couldn't be doing anything better. Do you know how many renditions I've heard of people tell me that? It's like, yeah, you're fucking perfect. Like your training is perfect. Now my training is perfect. Now my training is almost perfect. And that's because I have like one of the smartest humans in the world helping me with my and they're incredibly intelligent with training. That is a huge differentiating factor. And I think like the amount of smoke that gets blown up people's asses when it comes to just train hard, just train until you feel a glute pump. I mean, it puts you in this position where ultimately you equate effectiveness with sensation and completely forget about the aspect around intensity and whether there is enough runway to sustain this and whether exercises are ordered in a way that makes any semblance of sense. But I digress. When you go back to like, okay, you're doubtful of the movement. You're doubtful of the way you're doing the movement, the form, the intensity. Okay. In training, for someone who's not like the highest skilled or who's not like has a full understanding of like what could be an appropriate modification, I would recommend not making that adjustment. Instead, what I would do is do your best to slow down the movements, really aim to eliminate all distractions. So is there something that like, maybe if you spent a little bit more time on the warm up, is there some kind of limitation related to your mobility that like, frankly, wasn't there last week and now that's affecting your ability to stay in the right position? Okay, potentially that's the case. Is it just the fact like, you reflect, you're like, okay, actually, I'm not very hydrated. I'm not very fed. So in turn, I'm not getting the same kind of sensation that I would be getting otherwise. In that case, okay, well, we know that 5% decrease in hydration status will equate to about a 20% decrease in strength. All right. So some of this could be physiologically modified if you'd been on top of like X, Y, and Z. But if it's truly just the fact like you're uncertain about what it is you're doing, I would consult with an expert. I would consult with someone who does this specifically for a living. I would work with them. I would run through your program, run through your concerns, because truly, if this is not your expertise, I wouldn't aim to just, piece together shit you see on Instagram and be like, well, this is what this girl does, and this, and this makes sense, and her glutes look like this. It's like you can derive some motivation, sure, from it, but like I'll just tell you, there's a lot of people doing things incorrectly and compensating with a shit ton of volume and a shit ton of drugs. So it's like don't fall victim to just the ignorance of, well, this is what everyone does, so it must be the most effective way. People do a lot of things wrong and get away with it because we don't have a high standard of training within the realm of female bodybuilding, even more specifically the bikini division, because we don't really have a lot of people educating specifically on like basic principles of hypertrophy.